The alarm clock goes off at 5:45 in a ranch house on a tree-lined street somewhere in the American suburbs. It is 1954. The bed is a double, but only one side has been slept in. The other side is tucked and smooth, made up the way she used to make it, because he has not been able to bring himself to stop making her side every morning. He reaches over and slaps the clock silent. Down the hall, a 4-year-old is already crying. The 6-year-old will need to be up in 20 minutes for school. And the man lying in this bed, still wearing yesterday's undershirt, has no idea how he's going to get through another day. But he will get up, because there's nobody else to do it. 6 months ago, his wife died during the birth of their 3rd child. The baby survived, she didn't. Hemorrhage, the doctors told him, as if one word could explain why the woman who ran this entire household, who knew where every shoe and permission slip and winter coat was stored, who could turn $1.50 of groceries into a meal for 5, was suddenly gone from the earth. In 1950, the maternal mortality rate in the United States sat at roughly 83 deaths per 100,000 live births. That was a massive improvement over the start of the century, when the number was closer to 850 per 100,000. But behind every decimal point was a real woman. And behind every real woman was a man left standing in a kitchen he didn't know how to use. He pulls on trousers and walks to the nursery first. The baby needs a bottle. He's gotten better at this part, mixing the formula, testing the temperature on his wrist, the way the hospital nurse showed him. 6 months of practice. He holds the baby in the crook of his arm and sits in the chair by the window, the one she picked out at the furniture store on Main Street when they first found out she was pregnant again. Outside, the neighborhood is still dark. The milkman hasn't come yet. The porch light across the street is on, which means Ed Garner is already up for his shift at the plant. Life on this street hasn't changed at all. Only the inside of this house has changed. The 4-year-old, a girl named Carol, wanders in dragging a stuffed rabbit. She wants cereal. She wants Mama. He tells her Mama is in heaven, the same thing he's told her every morning for 6 months. And she accepts this with the terrifying ease of a child who has already started to forget. By 6:15, he's in the kitchen. In 1950s America, the kitchen was a woman's office. Entire books were published about how to run one. Good Housekeeping laid out daily task schedules, weekly cleaning rotations, seasonal deep clean plans. Breakfast alone involved brewing the percolator, which took a solid 10 to 15 minutes, frying eggs or cooking oatmeal, cutting toast, pouring juice, packing a school lunch for the 6-year-old, and cleaning up every dish before moving on to the rest of the morning. A trained housewife could run this routine with her eyes half closed. He burns the eggs, not every morning. He's learned a few things. He can make oatmeal now without lumps. He can brew coffee that doesn't taste like it came from the bottom of a creek. But eggs still get away from him sometimes, and toast has a way of turning black when the baby starts screaming from the other room. He scrapes the pan, dumps the charred mess in the trash, and starts over. The 6-year-old, a boy named Jimmy, comes downstairs already dressed. Jimmy has learned to dress himself because there is no other option. His shirt is buttoned wrong, and one of his socks doesn't match. He doesn't mention it, and neither does his father. Here is what the morning routine looked like in most homes on this street. The mother woke first. She opened the blinds, aired the bedsheets, and started breakfast. While the family ate, she was already mentally running through the day's list. After the meal, she cleaned up the kitchen, swept the floor, emptied the wastebasket, and started the laundry. If the children were school age, she walked them to school or sent them off, then moved through the house room by room, dusting, vacuuming, scrubbing the bathroom, polishing fixtures, watering plants, tidying the living room. By mid-morning, the house was spotless. By noon, she was planning dinner. By 3, she was ironing. By 5, the table was set and the roast was in the oven. This wasn't a few tasks. This was a full shift of labor that took training, planning, and years of practice. He has none of that training. Nobody taught men how to iron a shirt in 1954. Nobody taught them how to get tangles out of a little girl's hair without making her cry, or how to fold a fitted sheet, or how to tell the difference between a casserole dish and a roasting pan. These weren't skills men were supposed to need. The entire structure of post-war American life was built on the assumption that every house had two parents, and each one stayed in their lane. He was the breadwinner. She was the homemaker. When she died, his lane didn't disappear. It just doubled. The laundry is another country he has no map for. In 1954, roughly half of American households owned a wringer washing machine. His wife used to run it every Monday and Thursday, sorting the colors from the whites, soaking the dirtiest items first, feeding each piece through the rollers, then hanging everything on the clothesline out back. He tried it once and caught the sleeve of one of Jimmy's shirts in the wringer so badly he had to cut the fabric to free it. Now he sends most of the laundry out. There's a service on Elm Street that charges by the pound, and it's an expense he can't really afford. But the alternative is running that machine himself, and the last time he tried, he turned 3 of Carol's white undershirts a pale shade of blue. He drops Jimmy off at the elementary school at 8:10 and carries Carol and the baby back to the car. Carol will stay with his sister-in-law for the day, the same arrangement they've had since the funeral. His sister-in-law, Margaret, is a good woman. She has 3 children of her own. Taking on 2 more every weekday is a lot, and he knows it, and she knows he knows it, and neither of them talks about how long this can go on. Margaret meets him at the front door and takes the baby without a word. Carol runs inside to find her cousins. He stands on the porch for a second, keys in his hand, and Margaret gives him the same look she gives him every morning. The look is something closer to exhaustion on his behalf than pity. She loved her sister. She loves these kids. But she has her own house to run, and the weight of 2 families is showing on her face. He drives to work. The car is a 1951 Ford, 2-tone green, bought the year Jimmy was born. There's a juice stain on the back seat he hasn't cleaned, and a pair of small shoes on the floor he keeps forgetting to bring inside. He works at an insurance office downtown, a mid-level position, decent salary, the kind of job a man was supposed to hold on to because a family depended on it. His boss, Hal, shook his hand after the funeral and told him to take a week off. He took 4 days. At the office, his desk sits near the window on the 3rd floor, and sometimes he looks out at the street below and watches women pushing strollers and carrying grocery bags, doing the work that his wife used to do without anyone noticing. He wonders how he ever took that for granted. He wonders if she knew he noticed. Nobody talks about it anymore. That's how it works in 1954. The first week, people said they were sorry. The second week, a few of the men clapped him on the shoulder and said something about being strong. By the 3rd week, the sympathy dried up because sympathy is supposed to. A man was expected to absorb grief the way a sponge absorbs water, quietly and without leaking. Researchers at Case Western Reserve University would later describe this expectation as the blueprint of manhood, a 4-part code first outlined by sociologist Robert Brannan. The rules were simple. No sissy stuff, meaning avoid anything feminine, show no weakness, hide the intimate parts of your life. The big wheel, meaning gain and keep respect, seek success in everything. The sturdy oak, meaning be reliable, be the rock, never show you're breaking. Give 'em hell, meaning be aggressive, be daring, never back down. He follows 3 out of 4 of those rules every day. He shows no weakness. He stays reliable. He never backs down from a diaper or a burnt pan or a crying daughter at 2 in the morning. But the first rule, the one about hiding the intimate parts of his life, is the one doing the real damage. Because the intimate part of his life right now is that he is falling apart, and there is no one he can tell. During his lunch break, he eats a sandwich at his desk and calls Margaret to check on the kids. The baby took a bottle at 10. Carol had a tantrum about something. Jimmy's school sent a note home saying he pushed another boy on the playground. He writes the school's number on a scrap of paper and puts it in his pocket, where it will stay until he finds it again in 3 days, crumpled and forgotten. He is not neglecting his son. He is drowning in tasks he was never designed to juggle. The grief counseling options in 1954 are essentially 0. The phrase grief counseling barely exists yet. If a man wants to talk about his dead wife, he can speak to his pastor. who will tell him that the Lord works in mysterious ways. He can speak to his mother, who will tell him he needs a new wife. He can speak to his drinking buddies at the lodge, who will buy him a beer and change the subject. Psychology Today later described this as the double bind of masculine grief. Men were expected to act like a man, meaning stoic, controlled, forward-looking. But they were also judged for not sharing like a woman, meaning open, expressive, emotionally available. There was no middle ground. If he broke down at the dinner table, his children would be terrified. If he broke down at work, his colleagues would be uncomfortable. So he broke down nowhere. He picks the kids up at 4:30. Margaret has fed Carol lunch and given the baby a bath. She hands him a casserole dish with leftovers and says she'll see him in the morning. The drive home takes 12 minutes. Jimmy is quiet in the back seat. Carol is singing to herself. The baby is asleep. For 12 minutes, inside this green Ford on a tree-lined road in suburban America, everything is almost normal. Then they walk through the front door and the house hits him. She is everywhere in this house, and she is nowhere. Her apron still hangs on the hook by the stove. Her handwriting is still on the grocery list, pinned to the corkboard. The kitchen curtains she sewed from a pattern in McCall's magazine still frame the window over the sink. He hasn't changed any of it, partly because changing it would feel like erasing her, and partly because he doesn't know what to change it to. Dinner is the casserole Margaret sent home, reheated in the oven at 350 for 30 minutes. He's learned that part, the reheating. He can work an oven, he can boil water, he can open a can of soup and heat it on the stovetop without incident. What he cannot do is plan a week of meals, manage a grocery list, or bake anything that requires more than 2 steps. The casseroles have been coming since the funeral. First from the church ladies, then from the neighbors, then from Margaret. They used to arrive daily. Now they come a few times a week. Eventually they will stop, and he will be on his own, and that day is getting closer. After dinner, he washes the dishes by hand, while Jimmy does homework at the kitchen table. Carol plays on the living room floor with wooden blocks. The baby sits in a high chair gumming a piece of toast. The television set in the corner of the living room is off, because he hasn't had time to sit down and watch it in months. If he did turn it on, he might catch an episode of The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, where the family is intact and happy, or Father Knows Best, where Jim Anderson solves every problem with wisdom and patience. These shows were mirrors that reflected what American homes were supposed to look like. 2 parents, 3 children, a tidy house, a warm dinner, a father who comes home to a wife who has everything under control. A few years later, CBS would air My 3 Sons, where a widowed aerospace engineer named Steve Douglas raised his boys with the help of Uncle Charlie. The show ran for 12 seasons. It was warm and funny, and not once did Steve Douglas cry alone in his living room, or burn eggs, or lose track of a school note in his trouser pocket. That was the version America wanted. The neat one, the one with a laugh track. He doesn't have everything under control. He has a sink full of dishes, a kitchen floor that needs sweeping, a daughter who needs a bath, a son who needs help with arithmetic, and a baby who needs to be put down for the night. Bath time is the hardest part. Carol is 4, and she won't stop squirming. Getting the water temperature right takes 3 tries. She cries when the soap gets in her eyes, and he doesn't have the right kind of shampoo, the kind that doesn't sting. His wife knew which brand to buy. He stands in the bathroom holding a wet, screaming child, and for about 30 seconds he thinks he might lose it completely. Then he doesn't. He rinses her hair, wraps her in a towel, and carries her to her room. He reads her a story, Goodnight Moon. She asks him to read it twice. He does. She falls asleep with the stuffed rabbit tucked under her chin, and he sits on the edge of her bed for a minute longer than he needs to, because this is the only part of the day that feels the way it's supposed to. Jimmy puts himself to bed. He's 6 and he's already doing things that 6-year-olds shouldn't have to do. Making his own bed, getting his own glass of water, turning off his own light. He says goodnight to his father from across the hallway, and his father says goodnight back, and there is a distance between them that wasn't there before. Jimmy has started to become quiet. His teacher noticed. Margaret noticed. His father has noticed but doesn't know what to do about it because nobody has taught him the language for this kind of conversation. The baby goes down at 8:15. After one more bottle and a solid 20 minutes of rocking, he stands in the nursery in the dark, holding this child who will never know her mother, and he feels something that he will never describe to another living person. It's not sadness, exactly. It's more like standing in a house where all the walls have been removed. Everything is open and exposed, and the wind comes right through. He goes downstairs to an empty living room. The dishes are done. The kids are asleep. The house is quiet in a way that used to feel peaceful and now feels like a held breath. Her reading glasses are still on the end table next to the couch. He hasn't moved them. He picks them up sometimes, out of habit, and then sets them back down. In 1954, there are roughly 9.3% of American homes with a single occupant. This is a country that does not believe in being alone. People marry young, they stay married, they live in full houses, surrounded by family. Only 9.3%. Divorce carries a stigma that can follow a family for years. A widower is pitied, but he's also watched. The neighbors want to know if he's managing. The church wants to know if he's coming back on Sundays. His mother wants to know when he's going to start looking for a new wife. The expectation is clear. A man alone with children is a problem to be solved, not a person to be supported. His mother has brought it up twice this month. So has his boss, casually, over coffee, in the way that men in this decade talk about serious things, which is to say, sideways and without making eye contact. You know, Hal's cousin is a nice girl, someone at the office says. She lost her husband in Korea. The implication is always the same. You're a project. You're a problem with a solution, and the solution is a woman. Nobody asks if he's ready. Nobody asks if he even wants to date. The assumption is that he can't possibly do this alone, so why is he still trying? He will not remarry for another 3 years. When he does, it will be to a woman from his church, a widow herself, who understands what it means to carry 2 lives on one set of shoulders. But that is later. Tonight, he sits on the couch in a dark living room and does the thing that the blueprint says he must never do. He cries. Not loudly, not the way his daughter cries when soap gets in her eyes, or the way Jimmy used to cry when he fell off his bicycle. He cries the way men in 1954 cry, which is silently, with his hands over his face, in a room where no one can see him. If a neighbor walked by and glanced through the window, they would see a man sitting on a couch in the dark. They would not see the grief, because that is the whole point. The grief is supposed to be invisible. The tears do not fix anything. They do not bring her back or teach him how to braid Carol's hair or make the school stop sending notes about Jimmy. They are just tears. And when they are finished, he washes his face in the kitchen sink and dries it with a dish towel that she embroidered with small yellow flowers. Years later, a group of widowed fathers would form a support group, and one of them, a man named Neil, would say the thing that all of them had been thinking. He said it plainly, at a meeting, in front of the other men. The wrong parent died. His wife had been the family's nerve center, managing the children's lives while he traveled for work. When she was gone, every responsibility fell on him. And with each misstep, he became more certain that the family would have been better off without him. Every man in that room nodded, not because they wanted to die, but because the system had given them no tools, no training, and no permission to struggle. The television shows of the era told a softer version of this story. The Andy Griffith Show gave Sheriff Andy Taylor a dead wife and an Aunt Bee to fill the gap. My Three Sons gave widower Steve Douglas a live-in uncle. Bachelor Father gave a single guardian, a houseboy who helped with everything. The pattern was always the same. A man alone with children was a situation that required a substitute mother to make the story work. Even in fiction, America couldn't imagine a father doing it all by himself, but thousands of real men across this country did. Not in television studios in Los Angeles with a script and a stand-in mom and a studio audience. In real ranch houses and bungalows and second-floor walk-ups in cities and towns that never made it onto a screen. They got up at 5:45. They burned the eggs and mismatched the socks and drove to work with juice stains on the back seat. They buried their grief in the backyard of their own hearts and kept moving because the children needed breakfast and the mortgage needed paying, and there was no one else coming through the front door to help. It cost them. It cost them years of connection with their children, because stoicism and emotional availability cannot live in the same body at the same time. It cost them friendships, because men in the 50s did not sit around and talk about how hard it was to get a 4-year-old to eat vegetables. It cost them health, because grief that has no exit turns inward and starts to rot. Men make up 80% of suicide deaths, and that number, while measured in a modern context, traces roots back to exactly this kind of silence. The expectation to be strong, the refusal to let them be broken, the culture that said your job is to provide, not to feel. This man, the one in the ranch house on the tree-lined street, does not become a statistic. He survives. His children survive. Carol will grow up and barely remember her mother, which is its own quiet tragedy. Jimmy will grow up quiet and careful, the kind of man who checks on his children 4 times before bed, because somewhere deep in his memory is a morning when he woke up and his mother was gone. The baby will grow up never knowing what she lost, which might be the kindest version of this story. But the father, the man who burned the eggs and cried in the dark and kept getting up every morning at 5:45 because someone had to, will carry this weight for the rest of his life. He will never talk about it. His generation doesn't. He will never describe the 30 seconds in the bathroom when he almost lost it, or the feeling of standing in a nursery holding a baby who would never know her mother. He will fold those moments up and put them away in the same place he puts the reading glasses on the end table, right where they are, untouched, kept, but never discussed. The alarm clock goes off, 5:45 in the morning, 1954. A ranch house on a tree-lined street in the American suburbs. The bed is a double, but only one side has been slept in. The other side is tucked and smooth. He reaches over and slaps the clock silent, and then he gets up, because there's nobody else to do it. If this video stayed with you, go ahead and subscribe and leave a comment about the people in your own family who carried more than they ever talked about. It helps this channel reach more people, and these are stories worth hearing.